The ancient stones of Windsor Castle have witnessed countless dramas, the rise and fall of empires, the secrets of monarchs, but even those weathered walls couldn't contain the shockwave that rippled through the UK when news broke Meghan Markle had returned. Not for a photo op, not for a carefully orchestrated public appearance, but under the cloak of night, slipping through a seldom-used entrance like a phantom from the past. The audacity of it, after the Oprah interview, after Spare, after years of accusations and recrimination, she dared to set foot inside the royal fortress again, igniting a firestorm of speculation and outrage. The UK, it's safe to say, was furious. But let's rewind a bit, peel back the layers of conjecture, and consider the scene. Imagine Windsor Castle late at night. The tourists are gone, the gift shops are shuttered, and the only sounds are the rustling of leaves in the ancient oaks and the distant hum of London. Inside, most of the castle slumbers, its routines dictated by centuries of tradition. But not tonight. A dark Range Rover, its windows tinted against prying eyes, approaches a little-used entrance. No fanfare, no flashing lights, just a quiet, almost furtive arrival. The credentials are checked, codes are verified, and the gates swing open, swallowing the vehicle into the castle's private grounds. From the back seat emerges Meghan, dressed simply, her face partially hidden in the shadows. No red carpet, no welcoming committee, just a close protection officer guiding her swiftly towards a discreet entrance known only to senior staff and trusted family members. The door opens before she even reaches, a silent confirmation that her arrival was not only expected but meticulously planned. Inside, she navigates a labyrinth of narrow corridors, far from the public rooms that millions recognize. These are the arteries of the castle, the hidden passages where history whispers from the walls. Somewhere, a cleaner notices a light burning late in a room that's usually dark. Voices drift softly into the hall, one older, calm but firm, the other measured and controlled. It's not idle chit-chat. It's the sound of difficult conversation, long overdue. As midnight approaches, extra security appears near the private family wing, their presence subtle but unmistakable. No explanations are offered, none are needed. By dawn, unease permeates the staff. A tinted vehicle sits in a courtyard reserved only for the most senior royals. Footsteps echo near the king's private study long after midnight. Fresh coffee cups and used glasses appear in rooms that had been cleared hours before. The security systems are active in patterns, usually reserved for moments of high sensitivity. Whispers spread like wildfire, Meghan is back. Not for ceremony, not for cameras, but for something far more urgent. She hasn't stayed within royal walls for a long time, and her sudden, unannounced arrival speaks volumes. In the private dining room, breakfast is prepared for two. The details are precise, familiar, unmistakable. Someone important is still inside, and the conversations are far from over. Meghan remains out of sight, her car hidden, her movements shrouded in silence. But beyond the castle walls, that silence is about to shatter. The idea of Meghan returning in secret, under the cover of night, ignites a powder keg of emotions across the UK. Questions morph into anger, speculation into outrage. Why now? Why in secret? What happened behind closed doors that couldn't wait? Inside Windsor, staff tread carefully, avoiding certain corridors, lowering their voices, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. Whatever brought Meghan back on that night was serious enough to bypass tradition, schedules, and public expectations. This wasn't just a private visit. It was a moment that could reshape relationships, reopen old wounds, and unleash a national reaction that no amount of secrecy could contain for long. The stage was set for a royal showdown, a drama played out in the shadows of Windsor Castle, with the future of the monarchy hanging in the balance. What secret meeting could spark a reaction the nation couldn't ignore, taking place deep within the silent halls of the palace? It all began with a knock, late, long after most of the palace had fallen silent. It signaled a meeting few outside those walls ever expected to happen. King Charles sat in his private study, surrounded by generations of history. Polish, paper, and unspoken tension hung heavy in the air as Meghan entered and took the chair opposite him. The UK was already simmering with fury at reports of her quiet return, completely unaware that a conversation stretching deep into the early hours was about to unfold. Without ceremony, Charles slid a thick folder across the desk. Royal estates, trusts, future inheritances. Some documents dated back decades, others amended as recently as 2023. Meghan read carefully, absorbing how decisions made during her absence had reshaped financial paths, not only for herself, but for her children. The tone remained controlled, almost clinical, as Charles explained clauses, signatures, and the legal weight of each page. This wasn't about apology, not yet. It was about consequences. The discussion widened. Senior royals reducing public duties, health concerns casting long shadows. Charles spoke plainly about the strain on William and Catherine, the fragile balance of the institution. He outlined a proposal, a defined role for Meghan, without resuming full royal life or returning permanently to the UK. A plan shaped by advisors and solicitors, focused on selective appearances, charitable involvement, and firm boundaries designed to calm public outrage while protecting the monarchy's image. Meghan didn't interrupt, but when she spoke, it was with precision. How could any role exist under relentless scrutiny, especially after everything that had unfolded since 2020? Charles acknowledged the media storm, revealing strategies intended to soften public perception over time, though he admitted there were no guarantees. Outside the palace, headlines framed the meeting as proof of privilege and betrayal. Finances returned to the forefront. Certain income streams and property rights, Charles explained, remained legally tied to Meghan's status, despite her independent life abroad. Some arrangements now required her direct consent. Others carried deadlines linked to events planned for 2025. Amendments were proposed, designed to secure her interests while limiting future disputes. Months of preparation reflected on every page. Hours passed. The legal talk eventually gave way to something more fragile. Charles spoke of regret, of missed years with his grandchildren, of how public pressure had hardened private wounds. Meghan responded with her own account of feeling exposed and unprotected, her words measured but firm. For once, neither side raised their voice. They listened. Near 3 a.m., practicality returned. Follow-up meetings were suggested, timelines outlined, the urgency of certain decisions made clear. Meghan asked for time, insisting she wouldn't sign anything without full reflection. Charles agreed, though the weight of time hung heavily between them. When they finally stood and shook hands, the gesture felt historic but unresolved. Progress had been made, yet nothing was settled. As Meghan left the study, the UK remained furious, unaware that behind closed doors, the future of royal unity and division was still being quietly negotiated. The morning no one saw coming was about to begin. Meghan moved through Windsor Castle with a calm intensity, her steps steady, deliberate, strangely confident, as though the palace itself had drawn her inward. Staff spotted her leaving a private meeting shortly after dawn, heading not toward the familiar residential corridors, but deeper into parts of the castle rarely visited, even by senior royals. Whispers followed quietly behind her, carried more by raised eyebrows than by voices. She entered rooms sealed off since long before 2020, spaces frozen in time beneath soft dust covers and muted light. Furniture from past decades stood untouched, holding memories of gatherings, arguments, celebrations long forgotten by the public. Meghan ran her fingers lightly along the edges of tables and frames, not searching for objects, but for meaning. Security teams tracked her movements remotely, allowing her access under long-standing family permission, though the purpose of her walk puzzled everyone watching. Instead of following a logical route, she drifted between areas linked by memory and symbolism. She paused in a narrow library, where framed photographs traced the family's story across generations. A few minutes later, she appeared in service corridors, usually reserved for kitchen and maintenance staff. From there, she observed grand halls from unseen angles, studying how power and tradition looked from behind the scenes. It was as though she was learning the palace in reverse. On an upper floor closed off for years, Meghan stood before portraits dating back centuries. She examined the faces carefully, reading nameplates and dates, absorbing the weight of lineage. In another wing, she requested access to the royal archive. The archivist, bound by protocol, provided documents outlining titles, inheritance, customs, long-established precedent. For over an hour, she took handwritten notes, her focus sharp and purposeful. By midday, word of her research had spread quietly among staff, and unease grew. Her path later led to the private chapel, a place reserved for intimate family moments. She sat alone there in silence, the stillness broken only by distant footsteps. those assigned to the space sensed the gravity of the moment and kept their distance. Logs later showed that Meghan had accessed more sections of the castle in a single morning than most residents did in months, a fact that would soon fuel heated discussion beyond palace walls. At several points, she paused outside doors known to belong to senior family members. She didn't knock, she simply stood, reflecting before moving on. Those brief hesitations spoke louder than any confrontation. By early afternoon, a senior household manager had begun compiling a confidential report. Nothing she did broke protocol, yet everything about it felt extraordinary. As Meghan finally returned to her residence, staff resumed their duties, though the mood had shifted. Within hours, reactions spilled beyond the palace, and the UK was furious. Commentators questioned intent, symbolism, and timing, especially with memories of past tensions still fresh. Dates like 2018 and 2020 resurfaced in public debate, tied to weddings, departures, and unresolved fractures. What that morning truly meant remains locked behind closed doors. To some, it looked like closure. To others, a calculated reclaiming of space. But one thing was clear. Meghan's silent walk through Windsor Castle unsettled an institution built on routine, and the echoes of those footsteps were felt far beyond its ancient walls. The morning calm inside Kensington Palace shattered just after 8 when a quiet warning reached Prince William that instantly changed the air around him. Meghan had been seen at Windsor Castle, arriving under cover of darkness late the night before. The visit was still ongoing. No advance notice, no shared briefing, no time to prepare. Within moments, the weight of the news settled heavily, not just on William, but on the fragile balance the monarchy had worked to protect for years. This was not a routine family call. It was a carefully managed arrival, arranged with precision and secrecy, reportedly overseen directly by King Charles himself. Only a tight inner circle had known to everyone else, including the heir to the throne. The visit landed like a thunderclap. Outside palace walls, whispers were already spreading, and across the UK, public reaction was swift and unforgiving. The mood was not curious. It was anger. William moved quickly. By mid-morning, security teams were mobilized, engines humming as he headed for Windsor. The drive was silent, the kind of silence filled with unspoken consequence. In recent years, the monarchy had endured interviews, accusations, and global scrutiny. Trust had become a rare currency. A private meeting like this, held behind closed doors, reopened wounds many believed had barely begun to heal. Inside Windsor Castle, tension lingered in every corridor. Staff stepped aside as William passed, sensing the gravity of what was unfolding. When he reached his father's study, there was no announcement, no pause. King Charles looked up unsurprised, as if this moment had been inevitable. The explanation came carefully. The meeting was meant to be contained, focused, and free from old rivalries, a space for direct conversation without pressure. That reasoning did little to soften the impact. William pressed the point that secrecy itself was the problem. The monarchy, especially after 2020 and the fallout that followed, could not afford surprises. Private decisions had public consequences. Outside the palace gates, the UK was already furious, questioning motives and fearing another chapter of instability. Charles spoke of legal matters, financial arrangements, and unresolved details that required attention regardless of emotion. He insisted nothing discussed threatened the future of the crown or William's role within it. Still, the unease remained. Years of careful rebuilding risked being undone by a single, unannounced visit. By the time voices lowered and tempers cooled, one thing was clear. This was not just about family. It was about control, transparency, and the survival of an institution under constant watch. Meghan remained in guest quarters, her presence quiet but powerful, a reminder that the past was never truly past. As William left the study, resolve replaced anger. Whatever came next would not be allowed to drift into uncertainty. Any engagement moving forward would be on terms that protected the monarchy first. Beyond the castle walls, the nation waited, watching closely as another royal storm quietly gathered strength. Morning lights spilled across the quiet Montecito house as Harry reached for his phone, expecting routine updates and familiar messages. Instead, his screen was flooded with alerts that made his chest tighten. British headlines were racing across every outlet, palace insiders confirming Meghan's quiet return to Windsor Castle. The timestamp showed the story had broken less than an hour earlier, yet it already carried the weight of a national uproar. By the time Harry sat up, the United Kingdom was furious. Commentators debating motives, timing, and what this sudden move meant for a monarchy already under strain. What unsettled him most was not the noise from London, but the silence from Meghan. No call, no warning, just images circulating online of Windsor's gates, reports of a late-night arrival, and claims of a private meeting inside palace wall. Some articles hinted at talks with King Charles. Others whispered about legal and family matters stretching back to 2020. None mentioned Harry. That omission felt deliberate. As the day unfolded in California, the narrative refused to stay still. Analysts pulled up past dates. September 2022. The funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. May 2023. The coronation moments when tensions had flared and then settled without true resolution. Meghan's return reopened all of it. Her absence from public royal life for years only sharpened the shock. If she had crossed the Atlantic quietly, the planning had started days earlier. That meant choices had been made without him. Harry tried calling voicemail. He sent messages carefully written, then deleted, then rewritten again. Each unanswered attempt deepened the sense that something important was happening beyond his. Friends began texting, asking if the reports were true, if he had a statement, if reconciliation was finally on the table. He ignored them all, pacing through rooms designed to symbolize freedom from palace control. Now feeling suddenly fragile,